Halo is my favorite video game series of all time, and since I've been replaying all of the multiplayer modes, I've made what I feel is a pretty solid tier list of all of them. So drop your pants and prepare for the OG, Halo CE. Halo CE is the original Halo released in 2001, which means that this multiplayer is both the most impactful and the most flawed in the whole series. It creates what makes Halo great, creating the stepping stones for almost every FPS to come. The game is simple but great and has everything that it needs. Each game mode offers something for everyone, and its basic multiplayer fun, from Slayer to King of the Hill, Bungie's take on these games, mixed with Halo's combat, makes the perfect mix of fun and challenge. Every piece of every game mode fits well together, from the grenades to the map style. Every game feels unique. Now, at launch, Halo CE was limited to LAN, so for you toddlers out there, that means you had to sit face to face in your friend's stink dungeon and play with each other in person. Now, this means that the multiplayer experience at launch depended a lot on who you could find to play with. But going off the MCC version of Halo CE's multiplayer and what I've heard from others, the game is terrific. But what makes Halo CE and every Halo after it so fun and enjoyable is its simplicity. Since Bungie was forced to adapt Halo to be a flagship title for Xbox, the game had to be as simple as possible, utilizing the controller in the best possible way. The Halo CE multiplayer had a perfect balance of easy entry but a high skill ceiling. If you learned the maps and how the weapons worked, you could easily improve, and then it became about your positioning and who shot first. What made CE so good was the basic and plain fun that came with that experience. The game arrived with 5 core game modes, those being Oddball, Slayer, King of the Hill, Capture the Flag, and Race. Each mode offered a unique experience, with every map having different advantages. Though the game has its flaws, they are mostly due to it being an early console shooter and not having those mainstays of the genre, as it would later become the defining game in the FPS genre as a whole. Things like choppy gameplay, graphic smoothness, and spawn locations are a little janky, which can be annoying, as at some points you'll randomly spawn next to an enemy who you can't see. But I can't criticize the game for things like this, that online multiplayer was not yet a possibility for an Xbox game. High A tier. Halo 2 is the big boy and was their most integral multiplayer game of all time, in my opinion. It redefined multiplayer games, and if you want a more in-depth perspective, check out my other Halo 2 videos. But Halo 2 was a game changer, not only for Halo but for gaming as a whole. The multiplayer was one of the first to use Xbox Live and was certainly the best at it. The combat and game modes, combined with the community, made for a really fun experience, unlike any other then or now. It was the defining multiplayer title for Xbox, and the gameplay itself introduced dual wielding, and the general upgrading of graphics and fine-tuning of the experience made it one of the best multiplayer experiences of all time. It kept the simplicity of Combat Evolved while adding things that it needed, with some of the best new map designs in the series, and every map had a way to play for any situation. With many new weapons added and new vehicles, everything in Halo 2 felt fresh yet familiar, something the new games lack. One of the most entertaining aspects of Halo 2's multiplayer was the shuffling of random game modes together, creating unique situations and combinations that made every round a different challenge. Easy S tier. Halo 3's multiplayer was the first that I personally was able to play while I was alive, as by the time I played Halo, the servers for Halo CE and Halo 2 were shut down, but 3 was up and thriving. Halo 3 as a game mode made for what many see as the definitive Halo experience. It combined everything well, and as I see it, improves upon the formula in simple ways, without manipulating it to the point of annoyance like newer games. Though any issues people had and I had with the game were created by the players. Nothing ruins a multiplayer game like the players, and that is very true for Halo 3. Halo 3 introduced potential 60 frames to Halo and added projectile-based fire to the franchise rather than hit tracking. This made you forced to think about where you shot, as with this addition came strafing, causing you to fire into the future in order to hit them when they got there, as timing your shots became important. As a newer game than 2, the graphics were greatly improved, and in my opinion, it still looks great due to a phenomenal art style and an already decent graphics engine. The game, and specifically the multiplayer, was a combo of everything Halo, and it added Forge to the mix, allowing the people who made Halo to actually make maps themselves, which were then played by millions. But unfortunately, the evolution of the Xbox Live and the addition of a party system caused the community to be less active in the game chat and ruined some of that Halo charm. Though it is probably the best, I don't feel it added enough. Easy A tier. Halo 4 was one of the most controversial Halo games of all time. The formula was changed and the feel was changed. The art style of Halo, though, was more reminiscent of COD, and the weapon feel wasn't there. The maps were not appealing to the eye, and the layout was not vertical enough to give that tactical yet simple Halo feel. The reason that Halo shined is where it attempted to innovate, like using loadouts and the evolution of Forge. Though it was missing at launch, and the game itself was lackluster, it also committed a cardinal sin. 343 decided to make this game into a more live service focused game, with cosmetics and weapon skins. Halo was never known for that, and if anything, quite the opposite. The progression system was awful and did not stack up to Halo Reach, which is up next. Easiest C tier. Halo Reach is the most controversial Halo multiplayer under Bungie of all time. Reach changed the multiplayer forever and most likely assisted in setting 343 on the wrong track. It was different than the games that came before in feel and overall gameplay. Though the base game has a chance at being the greatest of all time, the multiplayer lacks in several locations. The guns were unbalanced and changed the complete feel of Halo. The addition of equipment was less of a pro and more pure annoyance. Only two were truly decent, and one was much better than the other. Armor lock is the most annoying mechanic in a multiplayer video game ever. You could be about to hit that kill streak, and suddenly this guy locks down, regains all his health, EMP blasts you, and kills you soon after. Though the equipment could have worked like in Halo Infinite, the game introduced some extremely annoying mechanics. The multiplayer still provided a bit of that Halo feel, though the maps, in my opinion, never stood out. Some had weird areas where the maps would be unbalanced between tight corridors and open spaces. The armor abilities made the game unfun and annoying at times, and the times they were cool were basic and a lot worse in comparison. Though in some ways the multiplayer is decent but in many it is not, and in too many ways does it fall short of its predecessors that it couldn't meet the level of its campaign. This is difficult, but mid B tier. Now it's time for the big boy, and not in a good way. Halo 5 is easily notorious for an awful experience overall, though the campaign is worse. The multiplayer had its fair share of disappointments and fall shorts, from a game that wanted to make Halo a more competitive experience, to some goofy abilities that were completely unbalanced. Halo 5 is the most unique out of all the games. Not only is it not a Halo-feeling game, but far from it. Certain abilities changed the game, and not in a good way. Spartan Charge could flip a gunfight around in 1 second. You could be near death and then randomly Spartan Charge, resulting in the winning player's death. The game was overall weird and continued that dumb live service model that Halo used to be good at avoiding. I also have a video going more in depth about this game overall, and feel free to check that out. But Halo 5 was so focused on the competition of the game that it forgot about the leisure. Not everybody wanted to have to go claw mode on the controller just to have to win. No one wanted to do any of that, and yet some were forced to, as the game was inherently a competition-oriented game. Similar to Halo 4, the Halo identity is almost stripped from this game, with the art style being unfamiliar and the post-game lobbies being less energetic than a funeral home. This game failed on almost every front to deliver on what it promised, and for that, D tier. The newest and truest multiplayer from Halo is in the form of Halo Infinite, which at launch had the least amount of content ever in a Halo game. But as the multiplayer had been worked on, it has vastly improved and provides what I feel is a very ample multiplayer experience. Halo Infinite brings back everything from the previous games with a few name changes. The maps are well designed, though some could use additional verticality, as some are lacking in that regard. But Halo Infinite, in my opinion, is the only Halo game to figure out equipment in a decent way. Everything is found around the map in certain modes, and if you know what you're doing, you can counter it with skill and know-how. The movement added into Halo Infinite is perfect. The addition of sliding and sprinting works great with Halo's combat, and it's truly a fun experience. The idea of a live service still bugs me, as the progression system was lacking and so was the overall multiplayer at launch. But current Halo Infinite has 3 progression systems that carry through every mode, and the Forge mode is active and has some of the coolest maps that any Halo has ever had. Even though the multiplayer is in a great state currently, and if it was like this at launch, it may overtake Halo 2 as my favorite, but I feel Halo is going in the right direction. B tier. Alright, bye bye.